Thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Hi, welcome to episode 9 of the Dream 10X podcast. In this episode, we're talking about 10X adventure. We're talking about interplanetary travel, going to the moon, going to Mars, and what it takes food-wise to get there. Anybody who's been on any kind of long-term adventure knows the importance of good tasting adventure food. Without good tasting nutritional food, long-term adventuring is just not possible. It all hinges on how happy our stomachs are in terms of how successful we are in achieving these 10X adventures, like going to the moon or going to Mars. Our next guest is helping to make these types of adventure foods a reality by making them more portable and palatable in interstellar travel. She's a graduate of Purdue University, where she studied plant biology. She got her doctorate from Arizona State University in molecular and cell biology. She is now a lecturer at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. She's also a mentor and an adventurer herself. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Kessens. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for dealing with all our technical glitches and everything. We're finally got things recording.
Oh, so, good. We're literally across an ocean here. We're doing well.
16-hour time difference. That's so hard to arrange a podcast. I love time zones.
Yes.
So it's been a really long time since you and I have last spoken, and I've lost touch with you, and I would love to find out what's going on in your life right now.
Yeah, it's really, really good to get back in touch with you.
Where are you?
So I'm in Christchurch, New Zealand. We're here sort of the middle of the South Island in New Zealand. At the University of Canterbury here in Christchurch.
How do you like it there? I've never been to New Zealand.
Absolutely love it. It's pretty much, you couldn't design a better place to live, I don't reckon. Just really good people, really great community. Really innovative university, and then you've got the mountains and the rivers and the lakes and the beaches of the South Island. It's pretty incredible down here.
What brought you to there? Because last time I saw you was out in the Arizona desert.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I figured, from one desert to another, right? So there in Arizona, I fell in love with the mountains and the rivers and lakes. And so at the end of my PhD, I wanted to go out somewhere else that had mountains and rivers and lakes, and sort of looking around the world and different postdoc opportunities, landed on a couple opportunities here in New Zealand, and was really lucky to get a postdoc here at the University of Canterbury. So the intention was to stay for a 2-year postdoc, and then the 2-year postdoc turned into another postdoc, which turned into I didn't want to leave. And so they haven't kicked me out yet.
Wow, that's great. So I understand just from listening to your TEDx talk and posts on LinkedIn that you're doing something with the aerospace program, and maybe you looked like you were trying out to be an astronaut or something at one point with NASA. Can you tell us a little bit about that adventure?
Yeah. So basically, my whole life has been one serendipitous adventure after another. I'm really lucky in that regard that, I've got different things that come up that I've been fortunate enough to be able to say yes to things. So I've always really been interested in space, and sort of, becoming an astronaut, but I never thought it was, a viable career. So my dad was in the Marine Corps, and so I grew up, watching the jets and the helicopters and things there in San Diego. But sort of fell in love with science as a kid and went on to graduate degrees. And so science became my passion, and I didn't think too much about the astronaut thing. until 2017. I was here in the middle of my second postdoc here in Christchurch, and basically I had a friend from the rowing team at Purdue that's working at the Kennedy Space Center, and she's an engineer there. And she had posted that NASA was looking for its next class of astronauts, and so I threw my name in the hat. Figured why not? I'm eligible as far as the physical and the sort of technical requirements, and threw my name in the hat with 18,000 other people, and ended up getting down to the top 50.
Wow.
And that selection process sort of completely changed my perspective on what was possible with my own research. And so sort of pivoted a little bit with my research, and gotten quite involved with aerospace here in both at the University of Canterbury and New Zealand as a whole.
That is so cool. What are some of the requirements to be an astronaut? What do they look for?
So the basic requirements are fairly simple. So we're actually going through the process again now. So the application just closed in March. So technically it's going right now. I think COVID's threw a couple wrenches in the plans, but the basic requirements for applying to become an astronaut this year, the requirements have changed just a little bit. So it's a master's degree in a STEM field, so science, technology, engineering, or math. It used to be a bachelor's degree, and now it's a master's degree. You have to be a U.S. citizen and be able to pass a NASA physical. But beyond that, it's pretty open. And so, NASA is looking for a very diverse crew as far as the astronaut corps is concerned. So they sort of keep it as broad as they can. So, in order to apply, it's pretty open.
Why are they looking for astronauts right now? Is it just for the International Space Station, or are there other missions?
So they're looking, sort of this last class. So the class of 2017 is the first of what they call the Artemis generation. So obviously we had the Apollo program going to the moon, and the Artemis program is going back to the moon. So right now we've got astronauts going to the space station, but they're planning missions back to the moon. So basically putting the first woman and the next man on the moon is sort of the next missions that they're planning.
Wow. And so did you apply for that again?
Yes, I have applied again.
Oh, that's so awesome. Any idea how big that pool of candidates is?
So there were 12,000 people that applied this year.
Wow. 12,000 and 18,000 last time.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it like to make it to the top 50? Did you think you were going to get that high?
No. When you see the caliber of the other interviewees, you're like, how am I actually a part of this group? Because they're just some of the most amazing people. The whole process was just so fun, more than anything. Just getting to meet all these amazing people, both in the astronaut corps and in the selection office. But really the other interviewees. These are top of their game engineers and fighter pilots and medical doctors. And physicists, and just these incredible people. So it was very humbling to be a part of that.
Right. I can imagine. So your skills in biosynthetic engineering would equally apply to the moon as Mars, right?
Correct. So it's basically trying to survive off of planet Earth. And sort of where my skill set comes in is growing things. So sort of life support systems. If we're going to keep humans alive, humans are some of the most complicated machines that we can put into space, because they're really difficult to keep alive, and they've got to eat. And so sort of where I come in is growing food and pharmaceuticals and things, using microbes. And in order to make microbes taste good, they need some bioengineering.
Okay, I'm still trying to get.
I can explain that in further detail. Obviously,
yeah, please do. I would love to. If you could just like wave top it or something, so
absolutely
idiots like me.
So obviously, we're not going to have cows and chickens and apple trees and wheat fields up on on Mars or the moon. Those are fairly labor intensive and resource intensive organisms. So we're going to need to grow things that are much simpler and much easier to grow, and that don't take that many resources to actually produce biomass from simple starting materials. And so the things that we'll be growing initially on Mars and on the moon and wherever we are off planet habitating, the first things that we'll be growing are microorganisms. So things like cyanobacteria, so simple blue-green algae, sort of like the pond scum sort of thing. And filamentous fungi, which is sort of like the mold that grows on your bread. These aren't the first things that you think of when you're like, a tasty dinner. But what we can do is we can bioengineer biosynthetic pathways to make them taste good. So the flavors that are in different plants, or the flavors that are in muscle and animals and things, we can actually bioengineer those biosynthetic pathways to make chemicals that taste good. The flavors in whether it's tomatoes or onions or muscle, we can actually engineer those into microorganisms. And so that's part of the research that I'm doing right now.
So is that through genetic manipulation?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So is that
bioengineering?
Similar?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what bioengineering means. Okay.
Yeah. So we're basically genetically modifying these microorganisms.
Okay. So it's not so much to make things look like food that we're used to. It's more about making them palatable and taste more like things that we're used to. Is that
correct? That's
okay.
Yeah. One of the biggest factors in food is obviously flavor and texture, and so we'll work on the texture thing, but flavor's the first thing that we're working on.
Very interesting. And so the reason this is important in surviving interplanetary travel is because these microbes are smaller and more lightweight to transport, right? And they require far less energy to create a palatable food from. What else? They still require oxygen and water to grow and make it, right?
Yeah. Yes. Correct. And I mean, depending on whether we're talking about algae or fungi. So fungi also require some sort of a carbon source. The nice thing about algae is they can grow with carbon dioxide. So we're still talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide as sort of the starting materials and some minerals and things. But they can get their carbon from the carbon dioxide, whereas fungi are a little bit more, they require a carbon source, a sugar source. But yeah, we're starting to play around with a lot of things.
That is very cool. Cindy, I don't know if you were saying something. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I just said that's really incredible. It's kind of like the Star Trek replicator.
It's a lot of fun, and it's very much it's very much science, but it's also art as well. Trying to understand what are the flavors that we're looking for. What's biologically easy to do, and what's feasible and what's actually gonna be eaten. Because obviously, if you're making something and it doesn't actually taste good, your astronauts are still going to starve because they're not going to want to eat it. So there's some very much, sort of a culinary aspect to this as well. So it's been a lot of fun.
That would totally change the ocean rowing too. Having all your food source very lightweight right there with you.
Exactly. Yeah. You want it to be as simple and tasty as possible.
I love that about your research, because I'm sure you have a lot of experience with expeditionary food.
Yes.
and the importance of taste.
Quite a bit, yeah. We threw a lot of energy bars over the side because we just could not stomach another protein bar.
Yeah.
They sink really fast.
Has that driven your research at all, or is this did it just happen this way?
I mean, it's partially serendipitous, but I definitely have that experience in the back of my mind. Obviously, I've never been, to the International Space Station, and your taste buds differ when you're in microgravity. Really? But I definitely have the experience, with the expeditionary, with the ocean rowing, and understanding, when you're tired and you're stressed and, you just want something easy that's comforting. That definitely plays into the research a bit.
And so you've been doing this research for the last 8 years or so? Same?
No, so the research on producing foods for Mars, that's still very much in its infancy. We don't actually have funding for that project. That's my little dream baby project right now. The projects that pay the bills are more terrestrial based. So we're working on some agricultural and some pharmaceutical products using filamentous fungi. So basically developing high value compounds for use on Earth is we have funding for right now. That's paying the bills.
That's interesting. I was going to ask if you had an Earth, an application on Earth. If you can apply it to Mars and the Moon, why not apply it to Earth as well? So
yeah, well, and everything that we're developing for Mars can obviously be used on Earth as well. So if we make it taste good, in theory, it'd be really cool if we had, a little fermenter on your kitchen countertop, and that's what you're making, your steak with or your curry with or something like that. It would be really cool if we could design something that people on Earth would want to eat as well. And thinking about, the circular economy and trying to create things as efficiently as possible. There are definitely terrestrial applications to what we're doing for the food stuff. But then, yeah, the research, the main research that I really do on a day-to-day basis is working on pharmaceutical and agricultural products using filamentous fungi.
Okay. It's funny. We just talked to Jamie Byron in our last podcast, who started a startup called Grove Labs, and his company built aquaponics systems that you could put in your living room or your kitchen to basically grow food. Using
That's
aquaponics
awesome.
types of systems. So we didn't plan. I didn't even really understand what you were doing until just now. So it's really weird that we've got you.
Yeah, it absolutely flows on from that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the cooker. Do you need some kind of hardware to make the food work?
Just a fermenting tank. I mean, that's
okay.
We are well away from actually developing this for space. We're trying to develop the bugs first. But then, yes, eventually you'll need hardware to be able to grow these things.
How
there's a lot of companies that are working on that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. How far off do you think that technology?
For fermenting things, or for the actual development of organisms?
Yeah. the food, production of food from the microbes.
I mean, you could do it right now. It just wouldn't taste very good. It depends how optimized you want to get them.
Yeah.
If you just want to eat spirulina, then that's ready to go. But if you want to eat taste nice, then that's a different thing.
Yeah. How far off do you think that is?
It's hard. Science is hard to predict.
Yeah.
Really, timelines and anything. Let me get some funding first, and then I'll tell you.
All right. Yeah. It all depends on the money.
And that's an unfortunate truth of this game.
Yeah. So this next cohort for Artemis, can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
I am absolutely not an expert. I just know what I know from basically poring over all of NASA's social media and websites and things. So they're developing systems to go back to the moon. The initial timeline was 2024, and I'm not privy to the current schedules. I know COVID's sort of like I said, throwing a lot of spanners in the works there. So looking to put the first woman and the next man on the moon here sort of in the next decade. And so they're working on both hardware and rockets and landers to make that a reality right now. I think one of the mock-ups for one of the landers just got delivered to Johnson Space Center. I know everybody's quite excited about that.
That's really ambitious, 2024.
Yeah, well, I think that was a political thing. Again, I'm not part of NASA, so I think I can say this.
Yeah, but so you could be the first woman.
Yeah,
on the moon,
2024 coincides with a certain. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. But yes, it is ambitious. But it's good to be ambitious. It's good to have timelines and goals.
That's right. You're talking our language. You could be the first woman on the moon.
I mean, that in theory, yes. More than likely, it's going to be somebody that's already in the astronaut corps. They've got no shortage of phenomenal female astronauts to choose from. It's going to be really cool to see that. I mean, I would absolutely love to be there, but I don't know that the timeline would work for me. But it's still going to be really exciting to potentially know, the first woman on the moon. That would be really cool. Or Mars.
Yeah, from our perspective too. If it's you, that would be amazing.
Well, just to be part of that team would be phenomenal. It's one of the, I mean, I've been a lot involved with a lot of incredible teams in my lifetime, and that's, yeah, the astronaut corps is probably one of the most inspiring teams that I've ever had a chance to at least even be on the periphery of. They're pretty incredible people.
So Artemis is trying to colonize the moon, is that, or are we just trying to go back again?
I think we're just trying to go back. I mean, there's a lot of plans with, Lunar Gateway, which is basically a space station that will orbit the moon. And that's, in the plans, and obviously plans get changed depending on budget changes, that sort of thing. But basically looking to have people living outside of the low Earth orbit, which is where we have the space station right now. So they're looking at basically pushing the envelope further, having people live in, either in lunar orbit or potentially eventually on a base on the moon, in preparation for looking to get to Mars. But we definitely need more understanding of how the body copes outside of low Earth orbit.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised we haven't already colonized the moon after all the stuff we did in the 60s and early 70s. Yeah. And it totally makes sense to me that you would want to figure out how to colonize the moon first before you go to Mars. It seems like a logical progression.
Yeah.
Rather than just try to.
Yes. I mean, just the difference in radiation when you get out of low Earth orbit. You want to find out how the body copes, with 3 months around the moon before, you're sending somebody on a 3-year journey to Mars.
Right.
There's lots of steps, but I mean, to think about, we were last on the moon, around 50 years ago, and we haven't done a whole lot since. And that comes down to budgets and priorities and that sort of thing as well. But no time like the present, right?
Right.
So these are
so exciting.
Really,
it's very exciting.
These are really intense, huge dreams. I mean, going to the moon, being the first woman on the moon, and building food in Mars where you can eat fungi that taste like cow. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. And then obviously rowing an ocean and all these other, and getting your PhD, because shoot, I know from experience as well, that's really intense. How do you visualize these really lofty, huge goals, or do you visualize? How do you dream about them?
I've been really fortunate since I was a kid to have really supportive people around me, and to basically, for people around me to also support these things. And so I read a lot, and I interact with as many diverse people as I can, and once I sort of get something in my head, then it's really hard to get it out of my head. And I mean, that was, with the Atlantic growing and with the PhD and with different things, is once I sort of latch on to these dreams, I'm pretty stubborn about making them a reality. And yes, I mean, I've had the opportunity to dream big, and then had the opportunity and the support to go out and make them realities, even when the going got tough. And so, sort of, I mean, how do I go about that? That's a really good question. I'm just just really stubborn, I think, more than anything, and keeping that big picture in mind, even when the going gets tough. And then you get into the nitty gritty details, and, every day is a challenge, and every day is a new challenge. And sometimes you go backwards for days at a time, but keeping that big picture in mind is what really keeps me going.
Do you like visualize your end result? So you visualize yourself walking on the moon kind of thing, or do you just have it in the back of your head, the steps to get there, or what do you picture when you picture that end state?
Yeah, no, picturing the end goal.
The end goal.
Again, and you can't do that, for the nitty gritty when you're bogged down with the details.
Mm-hmm.
But, sort of the end of the day, and you're taking stock of, where you got to that day or that week or whatever. And, again, a lot of times there's a lot of things that that go backwards. But keeping that, that footprint on the moon in the back of your head at the end of the day is what keeps me going. Yeah, that definitely that visualization of a successful result is what keeps me motivated.
Have you had any really phenomenal failures that made you question or pivot?
Lots. And honestly, the failures, I think, have been the biggest motivation, even more so than the successes, I think. So obviously the first ocean row was probably the first huge failure in my life. Up to that point, I had been fairly successful in my head, and it was really interesting. My teammate Emily and I had lots of conversations about failure during the 2005 race as we're sitting on sea anchor and getting battered by storms. And I remember saying to her, I was like, well, I've never really failed in my life. And then she pointed out all the ways that I had failed, because we knew each other quite well by that point. But it was really eye-opening for me. We would talk about, I would talk about, our national championships that we'd won. And she's like, well, what about, in your sophomore year when you got fifth? And it's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that was a failure. But it was really eye-opening after, this massive failure in 2005. And it's like, well, okay, what do I do with my life now? I sort of had this goal of, we'd get a world record, and then I'd come back and get married and get my PhD and get a Nobel Prize, and everything would be sweet. And it's like, actually, that's probably not how it works out. And that first, sort of lucky break for getting rescued there in 2005 really changed my perspective on failure, and that it wasn't the end. If you're alive and you can dust yourself off, then learn from it and keep going. So there was that big failure, and then through the PhD, obviously there's multiple failures along the way, but that sort of changed things and how you how you pivot to go in a different direction so that you are successful. And then obviously for the 2017 astronaut class, being able to get to that top 50 was a pretty incredible thing. And then not getting there was a pretty big hit, even though I knew that the odds were still against me. That was a tough one. And basically at the end of that process, I didn't have a job here. So it was starting all over again. And, wow. And again, fortunately, was able to get sort of a technician job, which was not the job that I wanted. But I was fortunate to have, a salary and be able to stay here at the University of Canterbury. And it was sort of 2 years of building myself back up into the position that I have now. And now I've got some grant money and starting to build my group up. But there's, all these big failures, all these big setbacks have really, sort of molded my perspective to where I am today, and definitely made me, the researcher and the friend and the person that I am.
Hmm.
So really, so much resilience there, and able to just keep moving forward. That's really incredible. How do you balance your energy between your personal and professional life? Accomplishing all these goals takes so much energy and dedication.
It does. And I think it's really important to have that balance. And I definitely don't do a good enough job of it. I think that's one thing that a lot of us do struggle with, is trying to find that balance. But I can definitely tell when that balance is off. And for me, going to the mountains gives me energy. Being with my friends, playing team sports, those sort of things, give me my energy when there's lots of things professionally that are either challenging or just, overwhelming. And so, trying to recognize in myself when I'm out of spoons, when I have nothing left to give professionally, and making sure that I get back out to the mountains, making sure that I try to find that balance. But it's not always easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what's the But what's one advice that you would have for somebody who's trying to achieve big dreams to maintain that balance?
I think probably the biggest thing for me is find a good mentor. Find somebody that's either going through that or has been in a similar position and can give you good advice. And for me, I've had some phenomenal mentors, both through high school that pushed me into degree programs, and especially now as sort of a young investigator, early career investigator. I found some really good mentors who are at a much higher level academically, and have been able to help me find that balance. And where other people have already figured it out, trying to learn from people that are much wiser than myself.
So do you have multiple mentors, or do you really kind of focus on one at a time?
I definitely have different mentors for different aspects of things. So I've got some phenomenal. My postdoc advisor was just, she's a phenomenal academic, phenomenal scientist. But she's gotten that balance right, I think, a lot of the time. And so she's been quite a career mentor for me as a whole. But then I have other people here at the university that can help steer me, towards different aspects of the research or the teaching or service sort of a thing as well. So lots of mentors, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so kind of like your own personal board of directors.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Very, very much so, yes.
So what makes you happy?
Going after big dreams, I think, is a big thing, is having a big goal in mind that really keeps me happy and motivated and focused. But more than anything right now is helping other people achieve their own big dreams. And so as I, sort of go into this academic, career, is as I have students and watching them develop their own big ideas. And so we're really lucky here in the School of Product Design, where I'm located. We've got lots of students with their own big ideas, their own products that they want to develop. And watching them develop their ideas and their big dreams and being in a position to help them, that just absolutely motivates me and just makes me really, really happy to see them going after their own big dreams. So being able to help develop people is a lot of fun.
That's pretty incredible. Oh, go ahead, James.
I was just going to say that's one of the reasons we started this podcast, is so we could try to surround ourselves by other people doing great things. It sounds like in your university setting where you're surrounded by these types of people day in and day out, and so it sounds like you derive a lot of energy from their big objectives. And so I just wanted to point that out. That I totally get what you're saying. It's very energizing.
Yeah, it is. It's all about culture, I think, and having that culture of innovation, and, and understanding that it's not every day going to be, happy and progressing things. But having that culture of support around you and having other people with big ideas and big dreams, and helping support people to reach those big dreams is a really fun place to be.
Yeah. Can you point to a family member or something in your childhood, or a string of a culture in your childhood that kind of inculcated this pursuit of whatever you think you could achieve? I said
Absolutely.
That really poorly, but
no. So what is it in, how did I grow up that allowed me to become who I am today?
Right.
Again, I've been really lucky in a lot of respects for my family and my early childhood education. So first of all, I had parents that basically always encouraged me to explore and to be curious about the world. So my mom was in science, so she had several different sort of careers, but always interested in science, and always encouraging us to read and to be curious about knowledge and education. And my dad is very much an outdoorsman, and so we grew up on 160 acres there in southern Indiana. And so he was always encouraging me to learn the different plants and, go out and explore the woods and those sort of things. Wow. And I'll never forget the day when I was telling my dad about, these species, and he didn't actually know what the species were. And he realized, his 12-year-old daughter knew more about these medicinal plants than he did. And it was a proud day for him. But at the same time, I think he was a little bit disappointed that, oh man, my kid knows more about these things than I do. But no,
That's
very,
awesome.
very supportive parents. And my sister and I have a younger sister, Emily. We were always out exploring. And so we were always encouraged to explore and to find out about things. And then I was really lucky when I was in middle school. My teacher, Miss McElroy, who was the science research teacher at the high school, she saw that curiosity in me. And she basically kept bugging me to be in the science research program. And I was already a nerd anyways. I was in the band, and I was like, I can't be more of a nerd and get into science fair. But she kept bugging me and kept bugging me, and eventually she won me over, saying that I could win money in these science fair competitions. Like, all right, I'll give it a go. And that literally changed my life, becoming part of the science research program. Tiny little Eastern high school in Pekin, Indiana. We were the #1 science research program in the state for several years running, and that's all credit due to Miss McElroy.
Wow.
And so she really took that natural curiosity that I had and molded it into, sort of understanding the scientific method and being professional and presenting and those sort of things.
Wow.
And that set me on the path of where I am today.
That is so powerful.
It was so incredibly powerful. And again, this has been, more than 20 years ago now. And I literally would not be here at my desk at University of Canterbury if it was not for her pushing me.
Wow. Thank you for that. That is really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Well, every time, Miss McElroy's retired now, but every chance I get to praise her and her program, I'm more than happy to do that. She's pretty awesome.
That's cool. So I feel like a little kid sitting at your feet, asking you to tell the story again about the 2005 Atlantic rowing race that you were in. Could you please tell that story again?
Absolutely. No, it's great. It's kind of funny. My friends who have heard the story dozens and dozens of times, it's always funny for me. I'm like, somebody else can tell it. And then the things that they remember, I'm like, that's actually not how it worked, but it's fine. So 2005. So I was a rower at Purdue University, and absolutely fell in love with the sport, of just the mental and the physical challenge of it and the teamwork aspects of it. And so naturally, at the end of my collegiate rowing career, why not row across an ocean, right? So I was, that's what everybody does, right? So basically I had read Deborah Veal's book, Rowing It Alone. And that really inspired me to pursue this adventure. And again, as a naive sophomore at Purdue, looked it up and found out the next race was going to be there in 2005. And so basically started researching it more and decided that's what I wanted to do. And again, these big dreams of mine, I thought, why not? Why, if anyone can do it, I can do it. And of course, I figured everybody would also want to do it. That was not true. But there was one woman there on the Purdue rowing team that also thought it was a cool idea. So Emily Cole, she and I had been competitors on the rowing team. But the fact that she wanted to do it with me, I was like, all right, well, we can be friends. We don't have to be competitors. So we signed up for the Woodvale Events Atlantic rowing race, which was going to be run at the end of 2005. And at the time, that was going to be the 4th race of its kind. So the first race was in 97, and then 2001, 2003, and 2005 was going to be the 4th race. The previous 3 races went off pretty much without a hitch. So it's a fully self-supported rowing race across 3,000 miles of the Atlantic Ocean, from the Canary Islands to Antigua. And so the first 3 races, the worst thing to happen to people is, a water maker breaks down or they break an oar, and you have to get supported by the support yacht, but not critical failures. 2005 was a little bit different of a race. So prior to the start, the Canary Islands had their first tropical storm in over 15 years. Our training down in Florida, we went through Hurricane Katrina. Fortunately, we were on land when it came across Florida. But yeah, so there's lots of storms there in 2005, which should have been a bit of foreshadowing as to what was to come. Yeah, but so the race was delayed a couple days because of the tropical storm there in the Canaries. But then we started off, and record-breaking weather. We got away, and we got away, and it was a good start to the race. And then sort of a couple weeks in, there was Hurricane Epsilon, which was several hundred miles away, but it was pushing, some tropical depressions. And so we sat on sea anchor for a couple days, the first couple weeks, and that went away. And then we kept going, went through Christmas and New Year's. And then basically after New Year's, it was sort of several weeks of bad weather that just never really let up. So it was Tropical Storm Zeta. That was about 200 miles to the north of us, just pushing all sorts of tropical depressions. So for about 2 weeks there, we never had waves under about 30 feet, and winds under about 30 knots. And I, being in New Zealand now, I go back from metric to imperial, and sometimes I say 30 meters, and it's definitely not 30 meters. It's just 30 feet. But some pretty big waves and some pretty significant winds there for the last 2 weeks. Leading up to January 15th, when it got pretty bad weather, and we were sitting on sea anchor. And so we were sitting on sea anchor through the night and through the next day. And about 4 o'clock that afternoon, we got hit in our port side, flipped upside down, 1,400 miles from the nearest dry land, upside down in 30-foot waves. Yeah, so as I say, I could tell it the 2-hour story, but for the sake of brevity here, basically we spent 16 and a half hours on the top of the upturned hull in 30-foot waves with nothing but an EPIRB, so our emergency beacon, which has a little bit of a strobe light on it, and the battery's working, but you really don't know if anybody's headed your way. And so for 16 and a half hours, sitting on the top of the upturned hull, not quite sure, what was going to happen through the night, through the next morning. And about 14 hours in, we saw a light on the horizon, which we hadn't seen a ship for 2 weeks. And so that was a pretty good thing until the lights went away. And then for half an hour, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, just out there in the dark. And yeah, it was pretty low. So again, Emily and I were quite positive people, trying to sing songs and tell jokes and keep morale up. But that half an hour after we had seen some lights, and then the lights went away, and then we weren't quite sure if anybody was coming after us. We're pretty difficult time, pretty low spot in the journey. But spoiler alert, we survived. And so the ship eventually came back. We had a plane, U.S. Coast Guard plane, C-130, that went over the top of us and dropped an orange flare. And at that point, we knew we were in the middle of a rescue mission. And so the ship that came towards us it looked like a pirate ship. So a British tall ship called Stavros Niarchos. And Captain Darren Naggs was only 35 years old at the time. And he can pick up women anywhere. So he picked us up out of the ocean, brought us on board, and we spent 11 days learning how to sail a brig. But yeah, not quite the adventure that we were planning. We were two pretty gung-ho, American kids that were going after our dreams and going after a world record. It didn't quite work out for us the first time around.
But you had the peace of mind to grab an EPIRB before you exited the boat to go sit on the hull.
Correct. Yeah. So
and that saved your life.
Absolutely. We would not be here if it was not for our EPIRB, which was kindly donated by Boat US, which was one of our sponsors, and we would not be here without them and our ACR EPIRB. Wow. We are here talking to you today because of the EPIRB.
Yeah. And why did the sailing vessel go away for about 30 minutes or so away from you that night?
Correct. So they're actually doing what we call a sector search.
Oh, okay.
And so at the time, it's a 406 EPIRB. At the time, this was back, 2005, did not have a GPS unit on it, so it was just a radio signal.
Oh.
And so obviously the radio signal gets stronger the closer you are to it. But because it didn't have an exact GPS point, the ship was doing what they called a sector search. So they would go 3 miles in one direction, a mile over, and then 3 miles back in that direction, basically trying to pinpoint exactly where the radio signal is coming from. And so when we saw them coming towards us, that was the part of the sector search where they were headed towards us. And then obviously then they're going away from us, trying to get that exact radio signal.
Wow.
So when they were going away from us, obviously we could not see them. But they found us again.
That's amazing. And so you mentioned that you guys kept your spirits up by telling jokes or whatever, but that doesn't, I don't think, really expresses the depth of what was going through you at that time. I can imagine, like, I would be just in the depth of despair at that point, like thinking that this could be it.
I mean, it wasn't a yes. I mean, yes, there are absolutely these big emotions. But we weren't going to let ourselves get into that despair, because as soon as you let yourself get into that despair, then it's over.
Right.
And again, we're two really stubborn people, and we're like, is this all you got? It's like, we're not done yet.
Wow.
We don't want to be done yet.
Eternal optimism. That's great.
And well, you have to. I mean, I don't think you really have a choice. I mean, you can give up, and then, you drift off, and then that's it. But so long as you're still alive, there's still a chance. And so long as you've got your optimism, you still got a chance. And so until it's that very second that you're gone, I think you gotta have hope. You gotta keep going.
Yeah. That is so powerful. So, but you didn't even quit then. 2 years later, you went and did it again.
Yes. Yeah. Again, we're really stubborn people. And so we knew we wanted to go again. So it's interesting, if you listen to our interviews from the tall ship, we basically knew, after a couple hours after we got rescued, that we wanted to do it again. We didn't voice that up to our parents too much. But again, this has been our dream. And basically, we weren't going to go through the rest of our lives having just given up on this big dream. We are alive. And again, by the very nature of having the opportunity to be alive, we wanted to have that opportunity to go out there again. And so we actually got the boat back. That was quite a bit of a journey to get the boat back, but it was found a couple months later down in Desrod in the French West Indies. And so we got the boat back, and we were fixing the fire up again to go in the 2009 race. So we knew it was going to take quite a bit of money to get everything back up and running. And so 2 months prior to the 2007 race, we got a call from Simon Chalk, who's the race organizer, saying that there was a force boat that was ready to go. And if we wanted it, basically, we would just have to raise money for the charity that owned the boat, and then we could have use of the boat. And we were thinking, well, either another 2 years of fixing the boat up and trying to earn money, or we could go now. And so to be honest, I was a little bit hesitant, because I was in the middle of my PhD and I had quite a bit going on at the time.
Wow.
But Emily, I think she was the smarter of the two. She's like, we're never going to get this opportunity again. And we could find 2 other people to do it. And so we recruited Tara Remington and Jo Davies, who were the other 2 women that didn't finish in 2005. We came back as Team Unfinished Business, and had an incredible race in 2007. And so the women's fours record prior to 2007 was 68 days, and we came across the line in 51.
Wow.
And I love how you took the UN off of the boat name to make it
Yes.
Finished Business.
Yeah, we became Finished Business. Yeah. Joe, basically, as soon as we got in, that was one of the first things that we did.
What an incredible story.
I'm real lucky, that's for sure.
So where do you want to be in 10 years after all of this?
A trip to Mars would be all right. No, in all seriousness, I think about my career, and I think about, the people that have inspired me and the things that I'd like to do. I mean, if I can continue my research and my teaching and my mentoring here at Canterbury, I think in 10 years' time, if I can have students graduated that are going on and living their big dreams and going after their big projects, I think the students will be hopefully my legacy. That would be the biggest thing for me, is in 10 years to have a cohort of students that are going on and doing big things in their own research. I would love to have some research up in space. So that's a big thing that I'm working on right now, is some satellites and technology to get biological experiments in satellites. So that's been really fun. But yeah, in 10 years, I mean, if I could have some more adventures under my belt and some really good research going, I'll be pretty happy.
That's great.
Or be an astronaut, but that's not up to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. When do you think when is the Artemis? When are you going to find out about the Artemis stuff?
I mean, in theory, the selection process is going now. The process, at least according to the selection timeline that NASA has up online, hasn't changed, but it's more than likely going to be delayed because of COVID. Again, that's not an official thing. I mean, in theory, we would know by June of 2021, but that's probably going to be pushed back a bit.
Well, keep us posted. We'd love to track
Absolutely,
you.
We'll do.
And best of luck. Now we're really pushing for you. You gotta do it.
Well, that's really what was the most fun part of the 2017 selection process, was just bringing the community in with me, and to have basically the whole of New Zealand backing me. Was a pretty incredible feeling, and to being able to go and talk to these elementary schools and have little kids, wanting to be the second Kiwi astronaut. It's really cool to be able to inspire people to go after their own big dreams, whatever they are. And again, to talk about failures and talking about resilience and not giving up, and to have that community behind you is a really special thing.
I love that. And you've been a great inspiration for me over the years with the whole ocean rowing thing. And I really appreciate that. And I've loved talking to you and hearing about what you're up to these days. And I wish you the best luck. And definitely we got to keep in touch with you.
Absolutely. It's really cool what you guys are doing. I'm really enjoying all the stories that you're putting out there as well. This is really, really cool.
Thank you. Cindy, got any other questions?
No, I'm ready to go row an ocean again. Thank you, Sarah.
Brilliant. I love it.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, a real honor.
Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
We look forward to talking to you again soon.